What is up, everybody? Welcome to the Burndown YouTube channel. I want to share the finished fuel cells with you guys, kind of go over why we did it for some of you that may or may not know, and then kind of go over some of the struggles that I had. And on top of that, we got a new computer, so I can get back to the good edits. I can get back to doing time lapses and things like that. I have been struggling. My old computer, it's a Mac, it was on its last leg. It finally kind of died on Sunday. So then I made the decision to get a new one. So hopefully the edits come back and then I can do time lapses. Then you guys can actually watch me struggle instead of just listen to me talk about how we struggled. But first off, we have two fuel cells here, right? For those of you that watch the channel, you understand why. For somebody that is new to this would be a race fuel cell and this would be a drive fuel cell. The reason you'd want two is you're gonna run different octane fuel ratings depending on what you're doing. When you're just trying to mosey on down the road, you fill this up with whatever garbage comes out of whatever pump you're lucky enough to pull up to while you still have fuel in the car. And then you just pour it in here, this thing sips and motors down the road and just guzzles and sips back on this 20-gallon tank. Well, when you get to the racetrack, you switch over to here. This will have pure corn E85 liquor in it. And this is what is gonna propel the Malibu hopefully into the nines. And we're gonna go fast and do well. The other thing it does by splitting these up is I had fuel temperature issues, so now we have more fuel volume, so it can circulate for a lot longer. We got about 6 gallons more it has to heat up before this thing will boil or have a problem. And when we get to the track, even if this thing is full of warm or hot fuel, we're gonna switch it over to this tank, which hasn't had anything run through it. So you give the motor a chance to cool down instead of this thing just sitting and boiling and just already hot before we get in staging lanes or do whatever. The fuel up here hasn't been run through or anything like that. We'll put fresh, cold, cool fuel in, whatever we got, and then hopefully that'll facilitate better runs, combustion, and that whole thing, and hopefully keep the rods in the motor. So what I want to share with you guys is I want to show you the tanks, show you the idea and the design and layout behind it, and where we kind of struggled, and then how we kind of came up with this whole deal. So width-wise, because of what I have in the trunk already, I guess we could pop it and show you, but this is pretty much as wide as we could go, and then I had extra length, right? And then on top of that, the depth, I can't get any deeper because we have the ice box that has to open right next to this. So we actually grew this way, and that is basically it. So we went up from 14 gallons to, I believe this is right around 20 for the driver tank. So that's, again, more volume. We should be able to drive further on the tank, and hopefully it takes a lot longer to heat soak and, you know, return it. This one is our race tank. It is just under 5 gallons, 4 and some change, I believe. The width was dictated by this portion, and then this guy here just kind of happened to work out that we had enough meat left over to kind of run these guys in line. And then height-wise, I didn't want it sticking up to the sky in the trunk. You know, obviously we still have to close the trunk, and then center of gravity. And then width-wise, it just made sense to just run the full length of it, because then I have at least enough gallons in here to like race and drive back to the pits or whatever. I mean, I probably could do a couple laps if I had to on a single tank, but we want to keep this nice and full and topped off, because as you can see, it doesn't have a gauge in it, because I figured at the track, one of my due diligence things is put fuel in Dane. So hopefully this doesn't come back to bite me, and if we have an issue, I guess I can always add a fuel sender. So with that being said, these are in-tank pumps. So this one would be the drive tank. We had to extend this little chingadera here to get the pump to sit all the way down, and that dictated the height of this one. We didn't have to extend it, so this is only 8 inches tall, as where this is 10, so we added a few inches to get it to seat. So this is only housing one pump. This is the drive pump with the return tube, and she kind of sits down in there like so. Speaking of that, I will show you. We got a little trough down there, which it'll return into, and that should hopefully keep this thing from starving. And it's not a big giant tray, but it should be enough that when we return the fuel into it, when the fuel's moving around, it should keep this thing fed, like I said, so we just motor on down the road. We've got a fuel sending unit. Supposedly the interweb said that this is okay for E85. We'll keep a close eye on it, because if it is not, we will cut that thing off quicker than you can, you know, shake a leg at it. We'll throw it in the dirt and we will keep on motoring, because I really don't want to have fuel problems. This may just look like an AN fitting, but it's actually, I don't think you can see it on camera, but there's a little ball down there. This is a, no, you can't really see it, but this is a -12 rollover valve. So if you flip this over, there's a little metal ball, and it's a check valve, and it stops the flow. So hopefully the fluid doesn't just pour out all over. Obviously that's a hazard. We've got the 4-inch Mamma Jamma on here with an O-ring seal, courtesy of Amazon. It's actually fairly cheap too, but yeah, look at that, bam, booyah. And you can see in there, and I opted for the bigger version because you can see kind of in there, and if I had to, I can get my hand in there if need be. I don't know why you would, but hey, I like to stick my hand in things, I guess. Same thing here, except this is the race portion of it. So this, we have one guy in there for testing, for fitting, but this will have 2 pumps in it. So this will go 2 into 1 like the system does now, and this will be a single. So that leads me to this. Each one has to return. So the way we're going to get these to separate is it'll be separate because you can fire this off separately, right? So this is your, obviously your voltage going in to the pumps. So on this one, this would be live. There's nothing here because we don't have a pump. And then on this one, both of these would be live. Well, I can put those on a switch. So if these fire off, it's pumping out of this tank. If this fires off, it's pumping out of this tank. And then we just have to choose what return it goes into. So do we want to return it to this tank or return it to this tank? So it's basically a valve, and I'll show you guys how we do that, but we're just gonna have one valve and then a switch depending on which pump you fire off. And if we get caught up and we screw up, this is actually going to flow over into this. So I'm using this portion as a vent into this tank, and then this one is obviously vented. You have to have a vent on your EFI tanks, and in the event that I don't switch it over, say we're pumping this tank but my return is still on this one, this is going to fill up because this holds more gallons. Well, it'll just come out of the top here, hopefully go in here, and I'm not a bonehead for too long, and I can catch it before we have an issue. And then when this thing isn't overly full, this is going to be my vent for this tank here. That was my thinking. Somebody asked about siphoning, but as you can see, there's nothing on the bottom of it. So without a hose going down, there's no way it could siphon the tank. If you did have a hose though down here and you looped it up and over, as soon as it gets lower than this tank here, like if this had like a hose too, it would siphon this tank. But I'm not worried about siphoning out at all. And then we've got a 3-inch, same deal here, a little bit cheaper guy, but it's the same brand, same everything, with the little O-ring and then the little guy in here. And then the difference in this one, I'll show you guys, is we baffled this tank. I don't know if you guys can see it in there, but there's a baffle there. So you can kind of see the weld mark here. So about halfway on the tank. So this whole section here is baffled off from that one to keep, hopefully, the fuel slosh from being too violent and for starving the pump. And then this one will return again on this side of that baffle. So other than that, this is material that we got. It's 080 aluminum, so it's a little thinner than I probably should have used, and it did warp out a bit. Like I put some heat welding this thing around and it kind of sucked it down, and the standoff is even higher now because I did little tear off plates. So this is 1/8-inch aluminum, which is thicker than this, so I doubled this up. So I made little 90 L brackets. You can see where it's welded here and here, and then I welded to that. So these are called like tear offs, right? So I did that to reinforce the corners where the weight is, where it's going to bolt down, and then to facilitate a little easier time welding. And speaking of welding, these are outside corner joints, and I need to practice these because, man, I struggled a bit on these. I'm not gonna sugarcoat it. We were okay in here. You can see we got a little contamination over here, but man, like these little outside corner joints are no joke. These aren't as bad, but the trick with these is the tank is so big that by the time I put it on my bench, I had a hard time reaching some of the stuff. So it all presented its own challenges. We got drains on both of these as well. But all in all, this one was a little easier to get to facilitate all these welds because the tank is smaller, so it was easier to manipulate, maneuver. But you get on some of these big guys, dude, and you know, we're on struggle street a little bit. I'm not gonna lie, this was a challenge, but all in all, I'm very proud of it. I'm very happy with it. and I think it's cool. I've been welding for about a year now with aluminum, doing the TIG weld deal. And the very first thing I welded on the car was my cold side intake for Rocky Mountain last year. So I think it was last year we got that. We switched it over to water to air. And you know, at that point when I started, there's no way I could have welded a tank that would hold any liquid. So I'm glad we got enough practicing with that and made a bunch of little trinkets and things and help people with welding stuff any opportunity I got. And then I would even sit and practice still, you know, when I had time in the afternoons and evenings. So that led me to get to here. This thing did hold, they both have held liquid, so I feel good about it. We will try to pressure check them before we put actual fuel, because that's like the last of the last. And then if you have an issue with fuel in it, it becomes more of a hazard to fix. But I'm super pumped and proud of these things, man. I can't, like I said, it's not, this isn't like, well, the weld porn channel, and I'm not trying to say, oh, look at how wonderful my stuff is. But the best thing that I did here that somebody wrote, and it wasn't me that came up with this, the guy said that, because I call it beads and boogers, but it was neat that he said there's more people that wish they could weld as good as I do versus the amount of people that can actually weld as good as I can weld right now. And when you break it down like that, it speaks volumes, and it really gives me an even bigger and better sense of pride in the work that I got to do, because we're talking the talk and we're walking the walk. And I've never stated that we're super pro at any of this stuff, but you guys watch me struggle through and you watch me kind of make it. We're climbing the mountain, and I can't be more excited to put stuff like this in my race car. So when people see it, they'll be like, wow, where'd you get that? And I'll be like, I'm the guy that warped that thing out and put boogers on it. I did that, you know? And it goes to show you guys that that's what it's all about. It's just repetition, getting out there, doing it, putting your mind to it, and then just not really listening to what people say. And yeah, I like to have fun and kind of make fun of stuff, and I get it, but I'm really not beating myself up too bad. I just want to come across and be normal the way that I am with everybody when you see me or meet me or whatever. But ultimately, I am very proud of this, regardless of some of the boogers and contamination or whatnot. It is still the best fuel tank, well, the best 2 fuel tanks I've ever made my whole life, because these are the first ones I've ever made. At some point, we'll look back and we'll laugh at these, but hell, these are gonna be some pretty fast, badass drag and drive fuel tanks. I couldn't be happier. Thank you all for watching. If you have any questions, you know, let me know in the comment section and I will answer them. And if something doesn't work and we made a mistake, or I'm like, I gotta change this, so we fix it, you guys are gonna know, because we'll do it right here on the Burndown YouTube. Till next time, guys, I'm out.